Okay, so it looks like we're live. I'm going to mute this here.
Yep, you can sit over here. You move it wherever you want to sit.
Okay, so I think we're good.
Check. Check. Check, check, check. Check 1, 2.
And Troy, can you hear us?
I can hear you great.
Troy, can you read us? Did you mute?
I think your volume is muted on you.
Okay. Do you guys need me to talk at all, or are we set to talk at all?
Working out the logistics of all being in the same room some of this year.
I think it should work now. Troy, how you doing, man?
I'm doing really good.
You can read me loud and clear?
Yeah, I can hear you perfectly. You sound even clearer than Leo.
My name is Kyle. I'm pleased to meet you, Troy.
That's nice to meet you too, Kyle. Where are you guys? Where are you right now?
We're in the desert of the southwestern United States. Where are you, brother?
Oh yeah, I'm in St. Louis. I used to live in Phoenix.
Yeah, we're in the Phoenix metropolitan area.
Oh, right on. Well, I lived in Tempe, Arizona for about 8 years. Moved out here to St. Louis in 2000.
I'm sorry to hear that.
It's nice out here.
Usually it's the other way around.
Oh yeah, I know. Well, actually, it's funny. People from St. Louis, they all come back. I remember when I moved out here, everybody was like, "Why did you move out here?" But I love it out here. It's really nice. Phoenix is really nice though too. I really enjoyed that.
St. Louis.
Yeah, I used to work at KUPD. Actually, I worked at a few radio stations out there.
That was always like a dream job of mine.
Oh yeah.
I was on the radio one time.
Yeah.
After I won a chess tournament. They had me on local radio, but that was my big radio experience. And they had the cough button in front of you could press.
Oh yeah.
Yep.
Yeah.
I just like to talk shit on live streams. Alrighty, and so for people just hopping in now, this is going to be Barge Bloodsports, episode number 3. I am Liam, or Honk, or however you know me in the group, and I've got Kyle Everett in the group here, and I've got Mr. Troy here from the group as well, and we're going to have a nice little healthcare debate about Kyle and basically me as well. We're going to take the pro-universal healthcare side. Troy is going to take the anti, which what I assume would be the free market healthcare solution. Let me know if I'm not being accurate there.
Yeah, for the most part. I mean, I think that there is room for the government to get involved as a social safety net for people who do not have the access to healthcare. But beyond that, yeah, free is the best.
Awesome. So that's your position. And so the reason my image is not popping up here when I speak, just for the audience here, is Kyle and I live near each other. We're actually doing this in the same room, and we're getting a lot of cross noise between my laptop and this mic. So we're just using the better mic that we have out of the two. And so you'll hear me and Kyle using the same microphone. So I will be moderating this. I'm on the I'm a biased moderator, I'll admit. So I am pro universal healthcare.
Mm-hmm.
So I guess what we'll do is we'll go back and forth between Kyle and Troy. Maybe give like a 30-second to like a minute, just kind of synopsis of what your positions are. And then I'll just throw a question to one of you guys, let the other one respond, and then we'll just go into a discussion style format. How's that sound?
That sounds great. Kyle, if you want to go first, you're welcome to.
Certainly. So my position, I think, is fairly simple, that in America today, the appropriate healthcare policy nationwide is called Medicare for All. And it is a single-payer system but it is just a simple expansion of the pre-existing Medicare system that we already have here in America. Medicare, as it stands now, is the most popular health program in the United States, and I simply want to expand it to every citizen in the United States rather than just those that are over the age of 65.
Okay.
And Troy, go ahead and give us your little rundown there. I know you kind of did it briefly before, but like just a more specific of what your position is.
Yeah, well, actually, I think that that Medicare is a really good example of what I would avoid. So that I think is the poster child for what's wrong with universal health care or single payer or Medicare for all. Is that's a good example. Medicare is going bankrupt, as is Social Security, and at the price tag that would be required for Medicare, our taxes would be even higher than they are right now. Service and outcomes would be worse than they are right now, and choices would also be severely limited compared to what we're used to here in America. So that's my position.
Alrighty. And so I guess to just kind of get it started, let's do it this way. So I will ask a question of one of you guys, have the other one respond, and then just go into a discussion. So what I would say, Troy, let me go ahead and ask you. So in a position where you believe the market is the superior option in the healthcare, in everything healthcare, what the single payer system advocates is just abolishing the private health insurance part and nationalizing it. So the market still does its thing in healthcare. It's just a matter of who pays for it. And so in that respect, how would you say that the market for private health insurance is superior to just nationalizing it and basically just stopping the predation on sick and dying people?
Well, that's conflating the two things. So there's a difference between healthcare and health insurance, right? And some of the same problems face health insurance as they would this Medicare for all or single payer issue as well. But with health insurance, the issue is that when you have a system like a Medicare for all kind of system, you don't have anybody who is responsible for the decisions that they make regarding healthcare with skin in the game. So let's take what Medicare looks like right now. With Medicare, you have a lot of doctors and hospitals that do not accept Medicare for the specific reason that Medicare places artificial prices on medical procedures and medicines, and so what you have is doctors' offices and hospitals gaming the system, inflating their prices to the point where the pricing for health care in general is astronomical here in the United States versus most other countries. So that's that I think would be probably the biggest issue facing affordable healthcare is the fact that the government pays for it, and therefore just like universities are higher education is so expensive. Well, medical care is so expensive because the government is paying for it. The government is placing artificial prices on medical care.
So let me just try to clarify your position, Troy. So you don't really like government involvement in healthcare, but you had said earlier that you do agree there should be some. So I'm just trying to peg you down or get a range, like what percentage of total American healthcare expenditures should be government. Like right now, I think we probably agree it's around 40 or 50% of total healthcare expenditures are paid for by the government in the United States. So it's almost half. Is that too much? Is your position to defend the status quo, what we have now, which is like half government, half private? Or are you saying it should be even more privatized than it currently is?
Well, I'm not sure where you get the 40 to 50% healthcare paid for by the government, but I mean, I guess assuming that you're right about that the healthcare expenditures 50% are paid for by the governments. I mean, I don't know what the specific percentage is, and I don't have a specific targeted percentage of healthcare that should be covered by the government. What I would say is that there is a certain percentage of our population who does not have the ability to afford healthcare at all, and therefore, those people would fall in they would fall under the auspice of government. Not government provided healthcare, but government subsidized healthcare, and that would be the same percentage of people that take advantage of Medicaid.
Right. So it sounds like you agree with Medicaid, which would be poor people, relatively, super poor people get highly subsidized or free healthcare. So you seem to agree with Medicaid. But then what about Medicare, which it would be like government provided insurance, relatively cheap government provided insurance for seniors over age 65. They're not necessarily poor. The retirees in America, would you want to get rid of Medicare? I'm just trying to figure out where you stand. I'm not sure if you're for or against the current system and in what regards.
Well, I think that Medicare is not terribly effective in that you need to so Medicare benefits. I don't know what the coverage is on Medicare, but I know that that supplemental insurance is required for a lot of people who are on Medicare. Because Medicare just does not cover everything that's that's needed for people over the age of 65. But what the problem that I have in Medicare is the model, and I would say that if I were to agree with something, I would agree to a modified Medicare system where the money is spent by the actual people, but not managed by the government. So so for example, when the debate was going on between Obamacare and the Republicans, Paul Ryan had a pretty interesting idea of solutions. The talking point or the narrative of the Democrats was that Republicans didn't offer a viable alternative. Well, they did offer a viable alternative. It sounded pretty good to me, and that was to provide vouchers for everybody without spending any more money at all than what we are spending, allowing people to take the same amount of money that they would be allotted as Medicare beneficiaries, only to shop around with that money as vouchers to spend. So you'd say, I don't know what the cap is for Medicare expenditures, but let's say it's $10,000 for regular medical expenses. So if you have a public who is using, who knows that they have a certain amount of money available to them, then they can shop that around to doctors and hospitals to provide services, which completely changes the equation, right?
So like government vouchers for healthcare expenses.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
That sounds like rather communist.
Well, it's less communist than going to the doctor and having the government decide whether or not that medical procedure is approved or not approved based on the calculus of a government bureaucrat. So yeah.
So you don't mind the government paying healthcare expenses. You just like the individuals to have more autonomy in how those dollars are spent. So perhaps individuals would be able to go to like alternative healthcare practitioners rather than requiring Medicare approval to use certain in-program doctors and providers. You know, so you give a voucher and then they get more choice. The individual has more healthcare choice, but the voucher is still coming from the government. The government's still paying for it. Am I getting you right here, Troy?
Yeah, I mean, I would say that that is the that is the that is the.
I just thought you were going to be more of like a free market kind of guy rather than talking about like I thought you would say that the current system should be preserved or we should privatize it more, but instead you're talking about some type of Medicare system with vouchers.
No, I would like it to be privatized because I think that, you know, the massive inflation in healthcare expenses is due to the fact that the government pays the tab. But I'm also
where are these vouchers coming from?
Well, no. So what I'm saying is I'm a realist. I'm not here to argue about, what pie in the sky thing, in a perfect world would be, because I understand that's never going to happen. There is never going to be a totally free market solution to healthcare. What I have.
You should tell that to a lot of the fags in this group.
Well,
yeah, I was expecting you to have much more of a classic free market argument about healthcare in the United States, and this voucher program. These vouchers would come from the government, right? I mean,
yeah. If you want me to argue against the theory of this Medicare for all thing, so Medicare for all is a ridiculously stupid idea because we see it failing in every aspect of everywhere that it's tried. It fails, and it is failing right now. We have great examples of how it is failing. So,
right.
Yeah, I am a free market advocate, and I don't, I think, this. The thing is that if we are forced to shell out money from our checks to give it to the government, and to be clear, there is nothing that the government does this side of military that is as effective for the government to do as it would be for the free market. With the exception of the military, there's nothing that the government does that it really just doesn't fuck up really badly. So don't get me wrong. I mean, I am a free market guy, but I'm also a realist. I understand that this world will never be completely laissez-faire free market.
Okay, so you're a proponent of the free market, an advocate of free markets, but you think that the United States should use some type of system of healthcare currency issued by the government or vouchers issued by the government, and then people could go spend those at their own discretion. It does seem to be a bit of a contradiction.
Well, of course, it's a contradiction. It's a compromise.
Okay, but it just seems that our positions are not that far off, and that if I'm advocating for Medicare for all, I don't know if I'm quite as libertarian with it. I don't know if I'm quite into the individual discretion as you are. I'm not sure about the whole voucher thing, and there would be like death panels and people deciding what is authorized care in order to get coverage. In a traditional single payer system, the government decides what is authorized care, and end of life care, how long that can go on. So there really are like
How is
death
that
panels. So that's the
different from
system
medical
I'm saying is that what Japan has and Australia and much of the developed world has a single payer system, and it's working out relatively well for them in that they have better health outcomes than us in many ways, and they spend a lower percentage of their national wealth on health care. So this voucher idea sounds rather radical and untested, whereas single payer systems are working in the developed world.
So when you make these statements about Japan and Australia and other systems, you can't make those comparisons directly with the United States. We have 300.
It's not perfect apples to apples, but it's close enough to be relevant that we spend about twice as much as a percentage of GDP. We spend about twice as much on healthcare as other developed countries do, and this is unacceptable with this, quasi-private, quasi-public quagmire of a system we have. It needs to be streamlined. We need to switch things up fundamentally. And the simplest and most effective solution on the table is Medicare for all.
No, that's not the simplest, and it's not the most effective.
There is no voucher system to speak of, but we currently have Medicare,
right,
and it serves tens of millions of seniors across America. And I'm simply talking about expanding that to the rest of the population. What's good for the goose is good for the gander. This whole pie in the sky pipe dream about healthcare vouchers, that's not a big thing. But single payer systems in developed countries, that is a real thing, and it is really effective.
Well, it's a real thing because socialism is a real thing. I mean, it's those kinds of things are they're big because they're popular, but popular doesn't equal smartest.
I'll say this, though, is I'm amenable to your whole voucher program. I think it may be superior to our current system. An idea like providing people with a universal basic income, and then they have to pay for health insurance, kind of like Romney Care with Yang's universal basic income. So ideas like that might be workable. But yeah, what you're talking about is highly subsidizing the individual consumer of healthcare. And so I think on that point we agree that Americans right now simply can't afford the cost of American healthcare as it stands, and that we're going to have a large portion of it paid for by the government. Right now it's around 40 to 50%. I can't find that like a study or something, but right now America's right around 40 to 50% of healthcare expenses are paid for by the government. So I'm simply saying that should be around 80 to 85%.
And one thing I will say, just to make sure Troy is at an understanding of what we're talking about when we talk about a single payer kind of system, where everyone pays a flat fee to the government for health insurance, and the government just pays the bill, right? So it's not a system where it seems a bit more streamlined even than Medicare, if I understand it correctly. That it's not a choice of which doctors are eligible for Medicare at which hospitals. It takes the government just pays the bill, and you're done.
The government will discriminate though, and you can't go to Mary's Alternative Healing and
right.
be covered by Medicare.
Right.
So like Troy's voucher program would offer more choice to the consumer, but I'm not sure if we want the individual consumer to be able to do every wacky health cure offered by the public.
An ayahuasca trip.
Let me see if I
can, government.
Maybe I can clarify my position a little bit better. So when you're talking about going to Mary's wacky crystal healing place, whether that would or would not be
the Crystal Healing Emporium.
Okay, Crystal Healing Emporium, right? So, the thing is that when we're talking about government getting involved in healthcare, um, basically at all, you're talking about a centralized bureaucratic system that is choosing what is and is not best for society, right? So when you're talking about the
That's definitely what I'm doing here, and that's what we already have is a Medicare system. Do you want to abolish that, like as it stands now? Do you think that would be wise for us to abolish that? Medicare, Medicare is the most popular, most approved of healthcare program in the United States, and I'm just saying we beef that up and give it to everybody.
So you understand that Medicare is going bankrupt, correct?
No, your economic argument against Social Security and Medicare is common, that it's insolvent, that we're running out of money, and that's just not true. That's not accurate at all. The government is not running out of fiat currency.
That is not my. So that is not my.
It is not insolvent. These programs are perfectly solvent.
No.
Economically, Social Security and Medicare are entirely solvent. And one of the great scams of the federal government is to convince people that we can't afford your Medicare and Social Security, but we can certainly afford to permanently occupy Afghanistan.
You need to do research.
They have the money. They have the fiat. They can print the monies. We're not running out of money to pay for grandma's Medicare and Social Security.
I'll do a little bit of research here, because this is not my opinion. It's not a popular opinion. This is according to the Social Security Board of Trustees. And the Board of Trustees has been saying since 1983 that if we don't do something, that the Social Security and the Social Security trust fund for disability are going to become insolvent. And they've been warning us about this since 1983, saying if we don't do something, that this is going to happen. So they predicted way back in 1983 that by 2032, the entire Social Security trust fund would be depleted, and by 2016, the disability portion of Social Security trust fund would be depleted as well. That is exactly what has happened for the last 3 years. The Social Security trust fund for the disability portion of Social Security has been borrowing from the trust fund for Social Security. Social Security in general is projected to lose their trust fund by 2028 to 2032. Faster, if they don't figure out how to deal with this disability portion of Social Security. This is not a popular meme. This is not a conspiracy. This is the Board of Trustees who've been warning Republicans and Democrats for 30 years now.
You're talking about Social Security, though, right?
Okay, so yeah, that's Social Security, but the same problem.
You're talking about Social Security. We're getting on a bit of a tangent.
All right,
but I can respond to that.
But let me say one thing first, as moderator. As moderator, this is starting to turn into a debate on economics, which I will allow if you both are willing to go that route. I just wanted to put the conversation in check. This is becoming an economics debate, which is not totally inseparable from the original topic. Don't get me wrong. But if you guys are cool with going down the economics route, I'm cool with it. I just wanted to make sure that we are aware that that's happening.
Well, I think as long as it relates to Medicare and healthcare and health insurance, so we can make the same argument about Medicare. I just don't know specifically when the Medicare trust fund is exhausted. What I'm saying is that at a certain point in time,
how are you being consistent though? How are you being? I don't see how you're being consistent though. Like, how can they afford all these healthcare vouchers, but then they can't afford Medicare?
Well, so honestly, we really can't. And again,
you're advocating healthcare vouchers that you don't think the government can pay for.
No. So here's the deal. So what you're talking about is Medicare for all, and single payer, right? So
Right.
what I said was
Medicare for all is a type of single payer system.
right. Okay, so you're talking about Medicare for all and single payer system, and what I'm saying is that if you were going to do that, it sure would be a lot better if you gave the autonomy to the actual users of those dollars who stand to gain or lose as a result of their decisions.
They're gonna spend all their medical voucher money on medical marijuana.
All right, that's fine.
Can't be trusted.
That's
Can't
fine.
be trusted.
But here's the deal. So
I'm at least half joking there, Troy. I'm just pulling your leg there, man. But
I don't mind. I think
yeah.
I mean,
Your position does not seem consistent that we would have healthcare vouchers from the government, but yet the government can't afford the same amount being spent on Medicare. I agree that your system would provide more autonomy. We disagree on whether or not that's necessarily a good thing, but we're still talking about the same net government expense here, and the government can afford your vouchers, and it can also afford Medicare for all. The government's not going to run out of fiat currency anytime soon.
Okay, if that's the case, then I'll tell you what. If the government can go ahead and do that, and my taxes, that they can remove the taxes that I pay into the government, that's fine.
Well, here's the thing, is that people think that revenues are required for spending.
Mm-hmm.
So if we're going to spend money on a Medicare for all program that would admittedly cost trillions of dollars more per year than what we currently spend, if we're going to have $1 trillion annual programs, most people would think that we need corresponding tax revenues.
Okay,
This is simply not the case.
You say we don't have to spend more. We don't have to be taxed more for these programs.
Yeah, you can advocate these programs without advocating corresponding tax hikes. So Bernie Sanders and most people, including Bernie Sanders, don't seem to understand this. But the reality of modern monetary systems is that they are not constrained by tax revenue because they have the ability to create money out of thin air.
Well, shit, why haven't we been doing this all along? I mean,
we have been.
Why is it that
we have been? The United States federal government is almost always operated on a deficit. About 97% of the years we've been in existence, we operate on a deficit, meaning we spend more money than we take in.
Yeah.
We are not revenue neutral. We never really have been. There's very few years in which we even run on a budget surplus or a balanced budget.
So what you're saying is we can go to zero taxes and still pay for all the programs that we want.
We can have our cake and eat it too.
We can pay zero taxes. Like
we can have our cake and eat it too. We can pay no tax increases, but also have Medicare for all. We would incur much larger deficits in the near term. In the short term, there would be explosive deficits, which we've had in the past for other spending programs like the War on Terror, which has cost upwards of $7 trillion so far.
And really, if you wanted to do something as a policy change, value added, I mean, you could always just end the fuckery in the Middle East, and there you go. You've from your view, Troy, you've paid for Medicare for all.
Yeah, that's a different subject to talk about foreign policy, but yeah,
as a matter of moving money around.
We've shown that we can spend trillions of dollars on somewhat discretionary national programs by spending $5 to $10 trillion on the global war on terror.
All right, let's stop right there. So, I'm a constitutional conservative. That's basically the way that the Constitution is set up is, I'm all about that. There's one item that is an unlimited amount that can be spent by the American government, and that is on the military. That is for the defense and protection of our country. So So back to your point. So you're saying we should just pay for all of the medical expenses, and and the reason is that if we're going to spend all this money on our military, we should be allowed to spend all this money on whatever healthcare.
Well,
Right.
to be fair to me, I'm saying that the cost of the global war on terror proves that we can spend trillions of dollars on deficit spending. We can deficit spend trillions of dollars on somewhat discretionary items on the national level.
Well, the military is one of the items that is not discretionary. So
are you saying we needed to invade Iraq? Were the Iraqis about to attack us, Troy?
that really is a tangent. That we could discuss that, and I would be happy to do that. That's definitely off tangent.
It was not necessary
For America to occupy Afghanistan for 17 years or to invade and regime change Iraq. These were, for all intents and purposes, discretionary federal expenses.
I think to reset this a little bit, I think just the point was made that the United States can and does spend a shitload of money on stuff that is silly when it could be better spent on something that we're talking about here, which is, just having a better health, just not enslaving their own population with, if they're dumb enough to get cancer, then they're not going to be debt slaves their whole life. I think that was the point that was made. I don't really want to let this go off into a tangent on the Middle East.
Yeah. Okay. So let's get back
to bring it back to your point, Troy. You were making the argument about economic insolvency for the Medicare program, and it's going broke already. So how dare we try to expand it to cover much larger American population than it already does? And I was just trying to say that we are not as expense constrained as most constitutional conservatives think that we are. We are operating on a new paradigm that really is not laid out all that well in the Constitution. I think the Constitution really mandates like a gold and silver bimetallic system with a plain reading of it. And that's not the system we live in. Our currency is not dependent on the amount of gold and silver that we possess. It's a fiat system, and we only have artificial self-imposed constraints about how we spend that money at a federal level, and that we're not going to run out of money that we can just create with a keystroke.
Okay, so let's get back to our medical issue and try to get down to the heart of the matter. When you are looking, so what you're saying is that Medicare isn't going broke because we can always print more money, right? So
basically, we're not going to run out of money to pay for Medicare. That is not as hard a constraint as you make it out to be.
Okay, so what is your metric for the success of Medicare? What would Medicare look like if it was successful? If we can't judge the efficacy of Medicare based on the outcomes versus the money that we're spending on it now, because money doesn't have any real meaning, how are you gonna measure success for Medicare or any single payer system?
Right. The reason I advocate a Medicare for All program is because I think it would have superior economic and health results for the United States. Economically, we would have to spend less of our national wealth on health care. Right now, we're spending twice as much as most other developed countries as a percentage of GDP. So that's one of the metrics that we should be going by, is that we should be spending a lower percentage of our GDP on healthcare expenditures than we currently do. We're currently spending way too much and getting too little. Other criteria we can look at would be infant mortality. We're surprisingly high on infant mortality. considering we are the heart of the global empire, we have a shocking a shocking rate of infant mortality. Also, we lead the developed world in medical-induced bankruptcies. So people are going bankrupt due to having to pay for super expensive medical procedures.
Which, if I can just add, not as a debate participant, but just the idea of medical bankruptcy in general just offends my senses.
But a lot of people in America go bankrupt from medical expenses. It may be the number one cause of individual bankruptcies in the United States. Um, End of life care, we'd like to see people, we'd like to respect our elders and have them treated better in long-term care facilities. That would be a criteria that we look at. Better overall health outcomes, less morbidity. So longevity would be an issue, living long, but also living well, morbidity. So people not being as sickly as they are. So there's all kinds of different criteria that you want to look at for your country's, health system. And I think Medicare for All would improve across the board on all these metrics.
Okay. So Liam mentioned that, some of the things that, and you did as well, things that offend your senses and things that that you are concerned about with our current system. One of the other things that we lead the world in is obesity, and obesity kills more people than, well, just about anything else. Obesity kills more people than cancer. Obesity is the leading killer of people in the world.
This is the FQ, the fatty question.
The fatty question. Okay, so
fatty question. So, what do we do with all the fatties?
So let's address the fatty question, because I remember when the Obamacare debate was in full swing, nobody really ever answered that fatty question. What are we going to do about the fatties? Because with the Obamacare, and I'm assuming that if you're talking about Medicare for all, you're also talking about eliminating the pre-existing condition, correct?
Well, the pre-existing condition clause of Obamacare mandated that private insurance companies couldn't discriminate against people with pre-existing medical conditions.
Okay.
So Medicare for All will not increase your premiums based on pre-existing medical conditions.
Gotcha.
And the private insurance that you would get known as Medigap, there's Medicare Gap insurance.
Gotcha.
That would probably be regulated away there as well. I think that was probably a good regulation to kind of force everybody into the insurance market. That we have less uninsured people. So yeah, that I would say that's a regulation I agree with on private insurance. And private insurance would still continue to exist in a Medicare for All program as it's most commonly espoused.
Yeah. So your position is that pre-existing conditions should not exclude you from coverage, correct? So let me ask you.
Right, but that's how it was before the Affordable Care Act.
Right. I understand. Let me ask you a question. So how old are you?
I'm in my mid-30s.
Okay. Do you smoke?
Yes. Right now.
Okay. Do you eat pizza?
Yeah.
You're not a fatty though, right? I mean, you're.
No. I am. I'm not. I have a pretty good BMI.
All right.
Normal. The same.
So I have a pretty good BMI as well. I don't smoke. I eat I eat lots of veggies. I exercise. I think I can run, I don't know, probably an 8-minute mile. I take pretty good care of myself, is what I'm saying. So I, even at the age of 54, probably would cost less than you would cost in just a few years, because I take good care of myself. Now, so if you're an advocate of Medicare for all, why is it that doctors should give you the same care that my tax dollars should a greater share of my tax dollars should go to take care of you, you Pringle eating, smoking bastard, than me, who takes good care of myself.
So I think there might be. Here's an interesting question I'll ask you, just to, for one, to move the discussion along, but also for two, just to kind of ask you both. This question is for you both, and I'll start with you, Troy, and then we'll go to Kyle. But what if we had a system that was, I guess, for lack of a better word, fascist in nature, where we had a single-payer healthcare system, where we had a Medicare for all system for people who are below a certain BMI, are non-smokers, and can pass random drug tests? Would you be supportive of something like that?
We already have
free market healthcare for everybody else, single-payer healthcare for people who are healthy and qualify.
In a free market. Is that a real cat?
Yes, that is a cat.
in a real free market system, we would have that. It's called life.
Not exactly. No, I mean, you look. I'm not a debater. I'm gonna.
You're familiar with the death panels, right, Troy? You know about the death panels.
Let's ask you. Let me ask you a question. There is a.
Let me answer the fatty question, Troy.
All right. So what is your fatty question?
Well, it's the fatty question. Like, what do you do with the fatties in a society's healthcare system, especially a single-payer healthcare system? What do you do with your fatties who require an inordinate amount of healthcare expenditures? Those with diabetes make up a huge amount of healthcare expenditures. The dialysis process is already socialized to a large degree in the United States.
Yeah, why do I answer that question? I don't want the single payer system. You have to answer that question. If you want the single payer system, you have to answer that question, not me.
Yeah, I'm trying to answer the fatty question. Let me get to it. So you've heard of these death panels, I assume.
Yes.
Most people have heard of death panels.
Yes.
So like private insurance companies, when you submit a claim, they'll have a review team that looks at it and gives it the yay or the nay. And a Medicare for All program would also have a similar board. Mm-hmm. And if you're super fat and you require a lot of medical treatment due to your obesity largely, then the death panel, the board, is going to come down on you.
Okay.
And they're gonna say, hey pal, your coverage may be reduced here. You may have to come out of pocket even more than you already do, because you got to remember that Medicare as it stands now only is 80% of your medical expenses, and then you got to have Medigap insurance for the rest,
mm-hmm.
or you got to pay out of pocket.
Yeah. And so back in 1983, under the Reagan administration, Social Security benefits were opened to tax. And at this moment in time, there's a discussion on Capitol Hill about increasing the tax for Social Security recipients, right?
And I'm opposed to this.
Okay.
I don't think we need to fund these programs in the traditional sense.
The household fallacy.
We've already touched on this. So is that we can increase Medicare and Social Security benefits without increasing the taxes.
Right, but here's my point.
That's what I'm advocating, which, full disclosure, would mean larger federal budget deficits, at least in the short term.
Yeah, but we don't worry about that because money doesn't really have any meaning. But
no, money has a meaning. Don't straw man me, Troy. Money has a meaning. Money does not have a commodity backing it anymore. It is a true fiat fractional reserve system, and money talks.
Yeah, you're saying. But the thing is, you're saying that really, in terms of the government being able to print as much money as they want to, there really is no need to.
That's not entirely true. They can't really print as much as they want necessarily, but they're not constricted by tax revenues.
All right. So here's my larger point when I'm talking about the the fact that Social Security, when Social Security began, it was not introduced as a tax. It was introduced as a trust fund, and it was
I'm familiar with the Social Security program.
okay. So you understand that it started out as a tiny amount of money on only uh, on only a certain amount of your income, and that has increased from there to be about 14.7% now of your paycheck, divided between
I think it may be less than that, but it is a significant percentage of working class paycheck goes into paying for Social Security and Medicare.
Okay, so the larger point
that is true. That is true.
That I have never heard of a government program shrinking, right? So government programs do not shrink; they only get larger. And in addition to that, government infringements on the rights of its citizens never shrink; they only grow. And so what I'm saying is,
I'm guessing there's some exceptions to that, but that's probably a tendency that bureaucracies try to build their power and size.
Yes, all organisms.
That sounds like a truism. I might, yeah.
Bureaucracy is always expanding to meet the needs of the expanding bureaucracy. I think that's a true, I think, axiom of all that. To be fair.
Yeah, so that's relatively. So when we say that the fatty question is addressed by whatever solutions you believe are important, saying hey, we're going to reduce your benefits, we're going to require you to purchase secondary market insurance, we're going to make some
so we'll have death panels and we'll have fatty panels.
Right. So death panels and fatty panels. So what is it in the history of bureaucracies, not only of America, but of all bureaucracies in the history of the world? What is it about this bureaucracy that leads you to believe that it's not going to grow as well in terms of what it considers the fatty question, which will lead down to your choice into whether or not you eat pizza or smoke cigarettes or maybe the fact that you live in a predominantly minority neighborhood where your chance of death is a little bit higher. So therefore,
that's a slippery slope, my friend.
Slippery slope.
That's a slippery slope. You're saying just because we come down on the fatties with the fatty panel, then all of a sudden there's going to be all kinds of other panels, and that's not what I'm conceding.
Oh, it's not? Because so let me ask
no.
Did we not experience in New York City a tax on big gulp drinks?
Yeah, Michael Bloomberg
Okay.
in New York City put a sin tax on giant soda pops, and I'm not sure exactly what that has to do with my Medicare for all versus your crazy voucher idea.
So what it has to do with is the fact that the government is making decisions on a huge, they're making a huge decision for you and I. Okay, say your BMI is maybe your BMI is about 15%. Mine's probably about 18%. I'm older, but it's pretty healthy. I have low blood pressure and low BMI, and maybe I'll eat.
You're fighting for the big gulps?
Fuck yeah, I'm fighting for the big gulp. Who are you?
Fuck yeah, I'm fighting for the big gulps.
So here's the deal.
I don't like Michael Bloomberg, but that's not the hill I want to die on. The big gulp hill. Yeah, that's not the one I want to die on. I dislike Michael Bloomberg for other reasons, and him trying to keep his people from drinking big gulps. That's probably admirable. I don't know. I'm wishy-washy on the big gulp issue.
Well, yeah,
But
well,
that's not why I hate Michael Bloomberg.
yeah, but basically, so my point is that Michael Bloomberg is making a decision for me. I mean, I eat pizza on a cheat day. I don't remember the last time I've drank. I don't remember the last time I drank a Coke, much less a fucking big gulp. But what I'm saying is that if I want a goddamn big gulp, I want to drink a fucking big gulp. What is wrong with that? I take care of myself.
So this is the hill you're going to die on.
Well, yeah, it's a goddamn hill.
You're going to die on Big Gulp Hill.
I mean,
Look,
yeah, but the thing is,
the Big Gulp Island.
It's called paternalism. Is the term for it in political theory? It's called paternalism, and the people are like children, and often they don't know what's best for them. You got to tell them what's best for them and keep them from hurting themselves.
Yeah.
And that's the right thing to do.
You kind of put little rubber helmets on.
That's the right thing to do.
Yeah.
If somebody's drinking a gallon of soda every day, come on, bro.
If you want to drink a gallon of soda, I'm all for it.
No, quit that, bro. Quit that.
If you drink a gallon of soda, I don't mind.
See, in Troy's world, there's all these dudes that are trapped in their house because they're like 700 pounds, and somebody's got to cut them out of their house, and that's just not okay.
A crane's got to lift them out when they die.
Sometimes Big Brother, needs to come in and say, "Hey, quit it with the big gulps."
You really believe that? You're 35 years old. You really believe that?
What? Of course. Have you met like a normal person? Like these people, we gotta look out for them. Basically.
Why do we have to look out for them? Why?
Well, they're gonna struggle with some things.
Yourself.
This whole autonomy thing is like, yeah, to a degree, you want to let adults be adults, but once they've proven themselves incapable of handling the responsibility, then Big Brother comes in with the paternalism and says, hey man, you're costing us a lot of money on healthcare. Why are you drinking all those big gulps? Quit it with the big gulps.
Well,
if you don't quit it with the big gulps, we'll stop paying so much of your health care.
Back to the original.
It's a rather mild form of paternalism, really. I'm not talking about jackbooted thugs coming into people's house and taking their big gulps.
So really, I mean, you say it as if it's funny, but.
It is.
Let's take a look at some of the real things that are happening right now in terms of, I mean, there are many cities and states right now that have red flag laws that do allow jackbooted thugs.
The tangent moderator. Red flag law, that's like gun rights.
I'll allow it.
This is gun rights, right?
The thing is, it's not a far. There's not that much real estate between.
The moderator wants to allow you to go on this tangent, but I just want to say for the record that this is a gun rights issue.
I want to let him make the point
in a healthcare debate, but
I want to let him make the point he's making.
All right, so let's leave the gun rights issue alone, and let's get back to healthcare. And I'll give you an example of some of the extreme things that are happening right now in the world of single payer that we can look forward to if we decide to go single payer.
People love single payer. Let's hear these reviews. 5-star reviews on Yelp. Let's go.
No, let's not go with fucking 5-star reviews on Yelp. Let's go.
No. I thought you were going to start rattling off some stuff, but. I think it is an empirical truth that the most highly approved medical program in the United States is Medicare. Why do the people love it so much, Troy?
Okay, so people love Survivor. people love big gulps. People love
Right.
people love Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez. Why are you? I mean, are you really saying that people's opinion and what people love is going to be the benchmark for efficacy and success?
Well, to be fair, you as a market guy, that the whole thing runs on people's opinions,
Right.
No. It runs on people's decisions, right?
which is based on their opinions.
So let's take it back to the fatty question, right? If you're a fatty and you have to deal with the ramifications of your own stupid decisions of eating a pizza and drinking and chasing it down with a big gulp, and you have to live with that decision in terms of the fact that if you need a fucking dialysis machine and you got to pay for it yourself, maybe that will be a motivator for you to ease off the big gulps and the pizzas. But that may not be a popular decision for you and your fellow fatties. You know, pizza and big gulps are the most popular decision for fatties. So you know, pizza and big gulps aren't good things, but they're probably the most popular. They're probably a hell of a lot more popular than Medicare.
So back to my question for you earlier, Troy, would you be supportive of a universal healthcare system for non-smokers below a certain BMI? Just as a thought experiment?
No.
Hey, who gets your vouchers? Does everybody get your vouchers?
Everybody gets my vouchers, yes.
So that's universal health care. Like, everybody's getting credits for health care in the mail in Troy's system. That's like pretty universal socialistic health care, right?
Well, if we're going to, if we're dealing with the real world and the fact that, so in my
that's your proposal. It doesn't sound very constitutionalist conservative to me, but I'm pretty sure that's your proposal.
It is not constitutionalist conservative. You're absolutely right.
You're a walking contradiction, aren't you, Troy?
Yeah, I guess, you know, I mean, I guess the fact that I have to live in this world where I have to choose between, see, here's the thing, universal healthcare, single payer is a lot more possible than total free market system. Would you agree with me? Like,
yes, I think
if you have
the Ron Paul acolytes that yearn for 5 to 0% government expenditure on healthcare, they are wrong. They're dead wrong. They're catastrophically wrong.
Okay.
So if we tried to privatize healthcare in a short period of time, it would result in mass misery and uprisings.
Okay, so you might agree with me that there are far fewer advocates for 0 to 5% government expenditure on healthcare than there are advocates for universal healthcare single payer, right?
Probably close. I mean, yeah. I mean,
what do you mean close?
I think right now,
that's the whole reason why. I mean, that's
60 to 70%.
The choice was between Hillary and Donald Trump. It wasn't between Hillary and Gary Johnson, was it?
Far more popular than any of those politicians. Medicare for All has 60 to 70% approval right now amongst the American public.
It's 40% approval among Republicans.
Yeah, almost half of Republicans support Medicare for All, and 60 to 70% of Democrats. It's a significant majority of Americans are on my side.
Okay, so please tell me that I'm less sane for introducing an alternative to your Medicare for All.
Troy, what I'll say, Troy, is you're actually more sane than a lot of the other people in your camp, because you recognize that your ideal position is this abstract world that it's, you know, the other individualists, like conservative libertarian types in this group that we're in, are all stuck on retard island, and you're at least trying to branch out and find middle ground.
That's I mean, that's not the case at all. Basically, what the case is that we live in a society of soft people like you guys. You are soft.
Whoa, we're soft.
You are soft. You are, you know,
All right. What's worth begins.
All right. Bring back the jack boots.
Troy goes to the
no, this, the fact that
No. This is an authoritarian solution. The Republicans are right when they make this point that the state being the largest payer of healthcare is rather authoritarian. It's a centralization of power, and that's what I'm advocating.
The Republicans.
So the centralization of power, the hierarchy, this is generally a right-wing position. I'm talking about increasing the power of the state here, ultimately.
The thing is, I wouldn't call Republicans the gold standard for logic or.
No, I'm not defending the Republican Party. I'm talking about right-wing thought historically is rather authoritarian, and that a single-payer healthcare system is a centralization, a rather authoritarian solution to a healthcare system gone awry.
Well, right.
And actually, part of the problem is that we've had too much autonomy. We've given too much choice. We've given too much complexity to this situation. And what we need is a good dose of simplicity and the iron fist.
Oh my God, that's crazy. Like, so you're saying that more choice equals less good. When I remember, you guys aren't old enough for this, but I remember when calculators first came out, they cost anywhere between $250 and $1,000 for calculators. And now you go to Target and get a graphing calculator that costs you $30. That is choice. Cell phones used to cost $1,000, $1,500. Now they cost $100. Well, I guess you can't pay $1,000 on a cell phone, but it's not a cell phone anymore. It's a fucking Dick Tracy walkie-talkie where you can talk live to people all over.
It'll cook your breakfast and rub your balls.
Well, so to be fair,
to say taking choice away from people is a good thing is
sometimes it is. Sometimes it is. Just because it is freely chosen does not mean it is good. People make wrong decisions.
Yeah, and they should. And Darwin takes care of those people who make wrong decisions. What's wrong with taking the warning labels off of shit? The fact that we have so many obese people here in the United States tells us that we're doing the wrong thing. Taking care of these fatties is just producing more fatties.
Well, America has become
more bad decisions.
America has become increasingly obese in a healthcare system mainly dominated by the private sector. So I don't think you can blame the fatty question on me. I'm talking about dealing with the fatty question. I think it is a real problem, and I think any serious single-payer system needs to deal with obesity as a real problem.
Okay,
but our current healthcare system, which is at least half private sector, has seen an increasingly obese public. So this is my problem. This is a problem for the people that defend the free market or the status quo healthcare system.
All right. So how about you? How do you feel about the fact that you probably won't get to participate in this system as a smoker? You okay with that?
Medicare applies to everyone. Everyone. So right now, it applies to everyone over age 65, regardless of whether or not you smoke or if you're fat. Medicare applies to everyone. And
Okay,
I'm simply saying that we move it to age 0. So infants and newborns are covered just like 65-year-olds and grandma
well,
and
then
grandpa.
why are you worried about the fatties? I mean, why are you
The fatty,
against
dude,
fatties?
that's a serious societal problem. We have an obesity epidemic. It is a serious societal problem.
Yeah, but
Any
so
healthcare system needs to address that, and they
just
need to
because
try to
cancer,
discourage that.
well, okay, but I mean, so why are you discriminating against fatties when cancer is a problem too?
You gotta be hard on the fatties because they cost an inordinate amount of healthcare expenses,
You don't know
like
how. Are you
diabetes, for
familiar
example.
with the expense of chemotherapy?
Cancer is a huge cost as well.
All right, so you're going to be discriminated against as well.
Look, nobody gets kicked off of the program willy-nilly. That's part of the allure of a Medicare for All program.
Okay,
The old private sector dominated, insurance dominated model allowed insurance companies to reject people for pre-existing conditions.
so it's okay.
Part of the allure for a Medicare for All system is that it won't do so. But
Okay, so it's
you
okay.
eventually have to draw the line on end of life treatment, and we have to discourage people from becoming obese because it will drastically increase the overhead.
Well, how about discouraging people from smoking?
It already happens, though. I mean, public
Yeah,
schools.
like if you look at the United States federal government, they already spend money on discouraging people from using tobacco.
And actually, interesting fact along those lines, not really a debate point either way, just interesting fact. I think it was as of 2012 or 2013, there are actually more ex-smokers alive than there are actual active smokers, which is an interesting little factoid because there's a lot of government propaganda in the schools nowadays against cigarette smoking, and it appears to be working.
So there's all kinds of intricacies and nuanced details of how this program would work, and advocates of a single-payer program disagree on that. Many advocates of a single-payer program don't want to discriminate against fatties at all. They're body positive.
Mhm.
Okay, and they're more tolerant than I am. So there are divisions within the single-payer community, most certainly.
Yeah, but
You can't use that against us.
Yeah,
It's not that fair.
Yeah, but let me tell you something, buddy. Kyle, if you're going to discriminate against fatties, I'm going to have to discriminate against you. As a matter of fact, you live in Phoenix. How often do you ride your bike to work?
Never.
You better ride your goddamn bike to work, because if you don't, then you're not participating in a more healthy lifestyle, and we can't have that.
You're assuming a creeping authoritarianism.
Yes,
I think that's what you're doing.
That is a safe assumption too.
It is an argumentative fallacy called the slippery slope, where just because I advocate X, it also will lead to Y and Z, and that is not true.
It is not.
No, it's called the slippery slope fallacy. It is not necessarily true that what I'm talking about will result in a police officer that lives inside your house and monitors your eating habits.
Would you like to give me?
Okay, this is called a slippery slope. I'm willing to put it out there and say that we would have to do something about the fatty question, and that we would have to do something about end of life care. I'm willing to admit these inconvenient truths.
Okay.
However, to start saying that it would be this creeping authoritarianism that you're implying, that's not a fair criticism of the single payer system.
So if I could,
nobody is really advocating the level of authoritarianism that you're implying.
All right. Well, okay. Then can I give you a couple of examples? I mean, if this is not a slippery slope, then maybe then I shouldn't be able to give you examples of this slippery slope, should I? Like, if it doesn't happen, then there shouldn't be any examples of it happening.
Are you going to give less vouchers to the fatties? in your voucher program? Or are you going to do absolutely no discrimination whatsoever? Like somebody's 99 years old and they're on their 100th surgery. Are you going to pay for that with your voucher program? Everybody has to draw the line somewhere. And where it's kind of distasteful, but ultimately every system, including the private health insurance system, they draw the line somewhere and they say, no, this guy that's 106 years old, that we're keeping alive on machines, we've got to let this go. Eventually, every system does it.
There's always going to be a death panel.
There's always going to be a death panel of some sort.
So who makes up the death panel?
Bureaucrats.
So the death panel would not be made up of maybe the closest relative to the person who's on the bed, right?
Well, that's a bad idea. That's a bad idea.
So the person
I'd keep my grandparents alive forever, perhaps, in a fit of emotion. You know, you don't leave these things to the immediate family members. You may take their input, but you have a board. Hospitals themselves have boards that make these difficult end-of-life decisions. You know, pointing out these distasteful facts about healthcare and end-of-life care, hospice. These things sound nasty, but this is just the reality of healthcare. No matter what system.
No, brother. They don't sound nasty. They are nasty. They are fucking. When you talk about offending sensibilities, that is offensive. They don't sound nasty. They fucking are nasty. They are the most.
That's the world we currently live in. That is human nature. We live, we die.
Care for a person when their loved ones have to sit there and watch. That is nasty. That is disgusting. That's
what happens in our current system is that somebody will be super old and sickly, and the insurance company will say, no mas. It's over. The insurance company. Somebody's going to have to say, no mas. Because with our modern technology, we could spend millions and millions of dollars to keep people that are 100 years old. We could keep them alive on machines and spend ungodly amounts of money. This is the reality. This is the world we currently live in. There's always going to be a death panel. And it is distasteful, but it is a nature of human existence.
That's a very nihilistic way to view life, and I think.
Where am I wrong, though? Where's the lie?
You are wrong in that people are not numbers. We are not cogs in a machine. We are human beings. Every human life has intrinsic value. What's funny? What is funny about that?
No. Just a common argument against the conservative libertarian thing is that we accuse you guys of turning everyday people into just cogs in a machine. And so you just use that argument and flipped it around the other way and accused us of doing that. And so I was just kind of laughing because me and Kyle both made eye contact on that, and we just, it was just funny. It's a funny rhetorical thing. It doesn't mean anything that I was laughing.
No, but that's a silly narrative, to say that. So here's the thing: it's like, if you and I went around and around for like 30 minutes, maybe an hour, on the definition of liberalism, and we finally came to understand that your definition of liberalism was classical liberalism, and which includes.
No, it was liberalism.
Yeah. You're a liberal, Troy.
I'm a liberal. Yes.
Yeah, you're a liberal according to the technical definition.
It didn't take us an hour to get to the definition of liberal because of anything I did, right? I was going off what the word means.
No,
if there was any confusion on what liberal meant, it was on your part. Even our buddy Steve tried to bail you out of it and send you a screenshot of the definition of the word liberal. And there was still pushback to that. And at that point, I was just going to let you play around and deny it.
You know what? I mean, here's the thing. I could, if there are 100 people saying that a watermelon is red on the outside, and you're saying a watermelon is green on the outside, if you don't show me the fucking watermelon, then I can't make a decision for myself. When you say liberal, that could mean classic liberalism, as in George Mason and James Madison, or that could mean Kamala fucking Harris. You need to be a little bit more specific. The failure of communication is on you.
I was using the definition of a word as it exists. Like,
no,
yeah, this is
when I say I have a beer in my hand, like if you go to Google and look up beer, like you know what beer is. Like, I use the word liberal. You go to Google, you type it in. That's what it means. I don't know what to tell you, bud.
if you're holding a Coors in your hand, and you tell me that you're holding a beer, then I might disagree with you.
Well, that's a bit of a miscarriage. Okay, so this is getting a little bit off the healthcare.
Yeah, so let's get back to basically. So here's the thing. This whole narrative about conservatives are heartless and cogs in the machine kind of people. You're not talking about conservatives. You're talking about Republicans. You're talking about basically the flip side to the coin of the common Democrat. That is not conservative. That is Republican. So I mean, there are distinctions, and you can't say, oh yeah, well, conservatives. On the one hand, you have a sophisticated definition of liberal, and yet you have this simplistic definition of conservative. You need to be more, you need to be consistent in what you're saying. But let's get back to the point, okay? So what you're saying, what you guys are saying, is that somebody has to make these decisions based on black and white and what is best for society, and yet you're and then you laugh at me when I say no. Individuals have intrinsic value. If I'm 90 years old, I might be ready to check out, and I want that right. I want the right to be able to check out. I would like to hire a doctor to help me commit suicide. But if I'm 90 and I want to live, then I would like that opportunity as
well. And Troy, to be fair here, me personally, I am in favor of assisted suicide. And but like I said before, though, when I was laughing earlier, I was not laughing at you. I was laughing at just the rhetorical thing that was happening, because again, like us, like people on me and Kyle's side of the fence typically are accusing libertarian and conservative types of, thinking of people, everyday people, as just cogs in a machine. And so when you use that on Kyle, I just thought it was funny. Like, I just want you to understand that I wasn't laughing at you. I wasn't laughing at anything you were saying. I was just laughing at the rhetorical flip from what usually happens.
Gotcha. Okay.
But as far as assisted suicide goes, I actually agree that should be a thing. I believe.
Yeah. So what if somebody wants to live though? You there?
Hello.
Oh, there you are. Can you hear me? Okay.
So our mic got unplugged there for a second. But no. So I mean, but again, like me personally, I think assisted suicide should be legal within the context of you should be able to go if you can convince a spouse, a parent, a brother, sister, whoever, just a close family member to come in and sign for your sanity. You should be able to sign off and pay for a doctor to help you kill yourself. I don't particularly see something wrong with that personally. This is me. I'm not talking about Kyle, or I'm not representing any particular political philosophy here. This is just me personally. I think that should be a legit thing.
Okay, well,
I went to the bathroom, and now we're talking about euthanasia.
What do you think about that, Kyle? Is that do you agree with that?
On the euthanasia issue?
No, assisted suicide.
Same thing. To euthanize somebody is to put them down, like, your dog gets sick, you take him to the vet and you euthanize him. You put him down. Same thing with a human being. Human being wants to get put down. I think that we ought to allow it in highly limited circumstances, and it should be culturally discouraged.
And I do think a family member should have to be able to sign off on your mental faculties. for that to happen though as well. There should have to be some kind of witness to you being mentally sane for that to happen.
Just to clarify, Kyle, you believe that assisted suicide should be allowed?
In rare circumstances, yes, I think so. It's not an issue that I perhaps put adequate thought into, but off the cuff, yes, I think that assisted suicide, Dr. Jack Kevorkian style type stuff, ought to be allowed in extremely rare circumstances.
Okay, yeah, because we're human beings should be allowed to. I mean, of all the things that we should be allowed to make decisions on, it would be whether or not to end our own lives. I mean, that would be your most fundamental possession, wouldn't it? Your life.
Yeah, I don't buy the whole like libertarian, you own yourself, you own your life, you own your body type thing, but yeah, that's probably a decision that we should allow people to make if they're in a seriously painful terminal illness. Like there's some extenuating circumstances where we ought to let people kill themselves legally. However, suicide should probably be illegal in society. The cops stop people from jumping off of bridges. We need to be pro-life as a society is my position, generally.
Okay. So you are against abortion?
I am not against abortion. And I am going to drop the hammer as the moderator right there. So I guess we're coming at upwards of an hour on this, and so I feel like we've kind of gone off into a few tangents that have been constructive. So I let them go, but I think if you guys disagree, let me know. But I think pretty much at this point we can get into let's see if we can start thinking about wrapping this up.
Okay. Should the single payer pay for abortion?
If you guys want to go down that route, go ahead and fucking do it. I just wanted to put things in check. We've been going at this over an hour. I'm fine with going longer. But if you guys are cool with it, and if you guys want to go down this how single-payer healthcare or non-single-payer healthcare relates to abortion, then you guys can do it. I will just have to keep a careful ear on it and make sure it just stays relevant.
So I really only had one other point to make in terms of I had a point that I was pursuing with regards to somebody being allowed to decide whether or not they wanted to continue to live or not. And that would be that if you are in favor of allowing somebody, so let's say that they're terminally ill, and let's say that their quality of life is terrible, and they are depressed, and they're not willing to continue to live, that they should be allowed to choose to end their life, or ask somebody to assist them to end their life. My follow-up question would be, what if they choose to live? What if they want to live? Why is that not their decision as well?
So like when the death panels come in,
mm-hmm.
you're hating on the death panels?
Well, I'm hating on the idea.
Death panels got a hard job, but someone's got to do it.
No.
Look, everybody.
Here's the one thing that human beings are. Here's the one thing that human beings are 100% effective at, and that is dying. We are 100% effective at being born and dying. That's it. Everybody is going to die, no matter what.
But isn't it an apples to oranges comparison to where, like, if a death panel isn't necessarily deciding if you die, they're just saying that whatever institution they represent is not going to fund you staying on machines.
So my previous point when Kyle is saying that this slippery slope argument is a fallacy, is that we're not only dealing with death panels who decide whether or not a medical protocol is going to be followed depending on the age or the condition of the patient. We actually have single payer systems where bureaucrats not only decide whether or not they're going to treat a patient, but they decide whether or not a patient is going to live or die. And they will kill.
There's bureaucrats in the private sector too. The people at the insurance death panels are bureaucrats too.
No, these people don't actively kill patients. The single payer.
They deny insurance coverage for treatments.
Okay.
That happens all the time. The insurance company says, no, we're not going to pay for the 12th treatment on your 95-year-old father. The insurance companies do that all the time. Death panels already exist.
You get the distinction between covering a procedure and actually physically killing a person, don't you?
Dude, the single payer bureaucrats don't come and stab anyone. They're not directly killing anyone, just like the private health insurance companies are not directly killing anyone, but the private health insurance companies have death panels where they discontinue treatment options on some people, and they say, look, dude, you're 95 years old, your internal organs have failed, and we're not paying for any radical treatments at this point in time. We're going by the book, which means hospice cares. We put you on painkillers until you're out of here. That's the current system. The current system is kind of grisly, and it's always going to be kind of grisly. Our current society doesn't deal with death properly.
You're doing your very best to avoid this distinction, but you can't. There is a distinction between covering a procedure or a medication or physically killing a person. Google the Liverpool pathway. Google the Liverpool pathway. You look.
I think we all agree.
Nobody. The Medicare death panel is not an active ninja squad.
It's not a firing squad.
They're not like a ninja squad that goes out there and stabs people in the heart. They do pretty much the exact same thing as private insurance companies do. They decline to cover certain procedures.
We're talking about a slippery slope. You're doing your best. I'll give it to you. I'll give it to you, Kyle. You're doing your best to avoid this, but we're talking about the slippery slope, what you call a logical fallacy, which is an actuality. This slippery slope exists. We are not that far away from this. We go from death panels to actually physically killing people. And I've got examples of single payer systems that do that. So what I'm saying is.
And my counter to that is that private health insurance death panels kill more people.
No, they don't. They don't kill any people.
They do this. They deny coverage. Single payer government run systems deny coverage occasionally, and so do private health insurance corporations. Kyle, they will refuse to cover certain treatments, and it will result in the death of the patient.
Kyle,
it's the same concept.
If you get lung cancer, I am not going to pay for your chemo, and you're going to accuse me of killing you, but that's not true. Okay? Just because an insurance company does not pay an insurance claim.
That's all Medicare is. Medicare is a government-run insurance. Most people pay out of their Social Security payments. It goes right to Medicare, and it pays for government-run insurance. And the government-run Medicare insurance pays for 80% of your health care costs. And they can decline coverage, just like private health insurance. Medicare for All is simply public health insurance, aka government health insurance.
So you're trying to say
it's health insurance still. It's the same exact concept. Health insurance, death panels, private sector, health insurance, death panels, government, public sector. It's the same concept. Eventually we have to pull the plug and we have to say we can't spend millions and millions of dollars to keep this 95-year-old alive on machines.
So on the one hand, you're saying that that private insurance companies are bad, and on the other hand, you're saying that, well, it's just a necessity, so why not have the government do it?
There's several reasons why you want the government to become the bulk of national healthcare expenditures.
Because it's working well in the UK and the Soviet Union and I mean, is that your logic is that governments are better at deciding who lives and dies than private insurance companies?
Well, to be fair, the idea is that those dumb enough to get cancer aren't debt slaves their entire lives just because they got inflicted with a serious illness. I think that's the point.
Bankrupting your working class for getting cancer is not an ethical social system. I think that's...
So you're saying that everybody should be covered as long as it's okay that the government decides, well, you're going to die.
Somebody's going to have to decide when to discontinue coverage.
But a 23-year-old working class guy who like just got out of college and is diagnosed with like, I don't know, mesothelioma and he's entitled to financial compensation or whatever the fuck. That person, why should they spend the rest of their working life paying off a disease that wasn't essentially their fault?
Because life is not fair. I mean, are you trying to guarantee because you're not going to get them? You're not going to get a guarantee on life. I mean, bad things happen to little kids and puppies. I mean, life is not fair.
Well, I'm not going to speak for Kyle and his point of view, but my point of view generally of government is gregarian, where the government is the government basically is there to serve you, and so if there is an ability for a 23-year-old guy's coverage for a disease, for a serious illness to be paid for him, if there's an ability for that to happen by the institutions that are set up around him and it doesn't happen, I feel like that is a crime against that person. I know that's more of a philosophical point, and I don't speak for Kyle in that point, but I generally feel as though that situation would be saying just life isn't fair, fuck him, let him die. That's just that offends not only my sensibilities, but it's going to offend the sensibilities of pretty much everyone you talk to.
You walk up to any politician, you walk up to most cops, walk up to virtually any public servant, and you tell them you ask them whether or not they agree that they are there to serve you, and wait for the response.
Well, what do you think they say normally? Yes or no?
No.
I would guess that they would say yes normally, and that they would say that they're public servants.
I guess. I mean, I guess if they're trying to tell you what they think you want to hear, I mean, Chuck Schumer might tell you that he is your public servant. Nancy Pelosi might tell you that she is your public servant.
Yeah,
they may tell you that they are your servants, but guess who's really working for who? You try to not pay your taxes a year and see who the servant is. I mean, what do you think? You really think that the government is here to serve?
So what you're saying is the government is under the thumbs of the private corporations that you are wanting to put in charge of the healthcare system.
No.
Well, no. I think it's even worse than that. Is that Troy talks about a voucher based. Basically, it's like a single payer system, basically, where they send you vouchers.
Single payer with extra steps.
Single payer with less steps, and then you don't have to get approval for whatever treatment you need. So he's still basically advocating a socialist universal healthcare system, and the difference is just in the administration of it. Whereas I say there should be a bureaucracy that pays healthcare providers that are, he says that we should be giving out vouchers and we could spend them as we see fit individually and eliminate kind of that bureaucratic middleman. So it's just kind of this weird position that I see him hopping from one side to another on this debate, where it's from a socialist solution to, oh, the government's always bad and they're gonna kill you and live in your living room.
When is the government good? Why don't you give me some examples of when the government is good?
Well, do you think it would be good for them to give out vouchers? You know, like you're talking about government vouchers.
No, you're making the statement the government is good. I mean, or you're at least telling
That
me
would
that
be good. Like that would be a
you tell me, give
that
me
would
some
be
examples of how
preferable.
the government is good.
That would be preferable. That would be superior to our current system if they gave out vouchers. If they started mailing people checks for healthcare expenses, basically, and making healthcare less expensive out of pocket for working class Americans.
Well, you got
That
my
would be
rationale
great.
you got my rationale for that compromise, didn't you? Did you understand my rationale for that compromise?
I think I did. That you realize that most Americans cannot afford healthcare and need subsidization. So a voucher system would make healthcare affordable, but still give Americans the power to choose where they receive and how they receive that medical care through a voucher system.
Yeah, in
So
a really
that's
simple way, it's basically saying, you know, if it wasn't for lawyers, we wouldn't need lawyers. Well, that's basically the, you know, the voucher system is that band-aid. That's the band-aid that I would offer in alternative to your single payer system, because I know that, you know, there is
yeah,
no fucking magic wand that is going
yeah,
to get government out of
right.
healthcare.
You can't get government out of healthcare. It's already spending 40 to 50% of healthcare expenditures. Getting government out of healthcare is kind of unrealistic. This voucher program of yours, what it does though is it kind of gives up the thrust of the argument that we can just leave this to the free market. Your whole
We could.
voucher compromise basically cedes the argument to me in saying that, hey, the federal government needs to drastically subsidize healthcare for Americans and needs to take up more of the total share of healthcare expenditures. The government needs to take a bigger piece of the pie of healthcare expenditures. That's what your voucher program is saying. That's what I'm saying as well, is that, you know, half of Americans are basically cash poor right now. They can hardly afford their insurance premiums as is.
But you know, Kyle, they're undeserving pieces of shit. They deserve being cash poor.
Right. Yeah,
Yeah.
so we're not that far off in our proposed solutions and our
Liam, you're
policy.
not doing yourself any favors when when you make those silly arguments. You are not doing yourself any favors at all. You sound like every liberal I ever talked to who just like, I mean, you might as well just point your
Well,
finger at
if
me
you
and
want to be
say
honest on who
racist.
sounds like liberal, we just talked about this.
You might as well just, I mean, yeah, but that's the thing. You know, when we're talking about the Bernie Sanders, Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, Kamala Harris, Cory Booker, liberal, your argument is equal to that. Just, you know, might as well just like point your finger at me and call me a Islamophobe or a homophobe or a racist.
Well, so
are you
I mean, that's a
are
silly
you-
argument. It's a
are
really
you
ridiculous
familiar
argument.
with Otto von Bismarck?
No.
So he ran the German Empire and is known to be the father of the welfare state. And he's classically known as right-wing politician. You know, he's the head of state of the German Empire, Otto von Bismarck, unifying the German Empire, and he created a welfare state. The welfare state does not belong entirely to the left wing, and I would assert that I am to your right. Is that I'm actually taking the right wing position here. This is a right wing argument for single payer health care, for Medicare for all, the kind of authoritarian Bismarckian position.
Yeah, so there's basically you know, when it comes down to the very fundamental difference between you and I, between leftist ideology and your right wing ideology and my liberal ideology, the fundamental difference between me and you is that I have a fundamental faith in humanity, in the power of the individual to make decisions that are best for that individual. You mistrust that very same individual to make their own decisions. And therefore, you're saying we need an administrative state to make these decisions that individuals should not make themselves.
That's not an accurate characterization.
Yeah. I mean, we have many differences, but that is one of our core fundamental differences. I think that's an accurate depiction of my position.
Okay. And so here's the thing, my position makes sense to me because I say to myself, okay, I believe that people make decisions based on what is best for them, right? And the ones who don't make decisions on what is best for them are best served by facing their own consequences for those bad decisions. And so therefore, I don't not care for people. I believe that many people need help. I believe that charity is the best service for people not only who fall on hard times, not due to their own problems, but some people who do make bad decisions. I mean, I've made bad decisions that have landed me in hot water, and there, I can't say that I've pulled myself up by my bootstraps every time on my own. I've had to depend on the kindness of family, friends, maybe sometimes even strangers. I mean, I can't think of specifics, but I'm not saying that we are an island unto ourselves. I am saying that we should be allowed to make mistakes and face the consequences for those mistakes, and that society, being full of generous, kind-hearted people, can help those people who fall through the cracks or who find themselves in hard times. The government, as a heartless entity, is not that. That is not the function of government. Government is not supposed to be here to take care of us. Government is here to serve us. There are legitimate functions for government, but
you know what it sounds like, Troy?
Universal basic income is not that function.
Troy, you know what it sounds like? Sounds like you're government phobic. Sounds like you're a bigot.
I am very government phobic.
You're phobic. You got a phobia, bro.
I do. I have a big phobia.
It's the current year. It's 2019, and you have government phobia.
It's even worse.
Get over it.
Now, you know what? I love that T-shirt that I saw with George Washington's face on it, saying, "Yo, I'd have been stacking bodies by now." And you know what? It's true. The government is so much more intrusive and violating our rights now than it ever was back in the mid 1700s.
That's true. That's true. I'll give you that. The government is much bigger and more intrusive in everyday lives than it was in colonial America.
And now it just does it in collusion with the private sector. But I think at this point we can start to wrap this bad boy up. I know we've been going a bit long now, and the argument's kind of been come full circle once or twice, and this cat is scratching my foot. So I think at this point, let's do closing statements. I guess Troy, we'll start with you. Let's not put like a rigid time limit on it. Just what are your closing thoughts on the past hour or so that we've been doing here?
Okay. Well, I think that's basically my last point was probably my strongest in terms of my ideology and why I believe that government needs to be much, much, much smaller than it is. Your solution grows it exponentially, and so that goes completely the wrong direction. There is not a thing that I can think of that government just does not fuck up so badly that we need to get it out of. And so, to give government even more power over our healthcare is a tremendous mistake.
Okay, heard that. And then Kyle, your closing thoughts on this?
I don't disagree that there are problems with the American government. However, making them foot the majority of the healthcare expenses in America, that would not be a problem. That would not be one of the downsides of the American federal government. So there are things that government can do correctly. There is a purpose for the state. The healthcare system is so chaotic and dysfunctional that it only makes sense to simplify it with a single payer system that most other Western developed countries have already enacted some form of. And so yeah, I think my position is rather nationalistic and humanistic and functional and pragmatic. And I think that you'll find agreement from the far left to the far right on a single payer program, and it is the wave of the future.
And so with that, this was Barge Bloodsports, episode number 3 on healthcare. I'm sure there will be several parts to this as different people debate different perspectives on this whole topic. I just wanted to give a thank you to Troy and Kyle. This is actually supposed to be a 2-on-2 debate at first, but then time zones got all fucky and shit happens. And so I appreciate you guys taking the time out of your nights, your Saturday nights, no less, to do this. And yeah, we will see you at the next episode.
All right. Thanks for having the blood sport. That's fun.
Yep. Later, guys.
All right, guys. Take care.